She's Nico. She's Kat.
Pelirrojo pero venezolano.
I'm from Puerto Rico. Born and raised in Brooklyn.
U.S. born. First generation.
From Brooklyn, New York.
Palm Springs, California.
Caracas, Venezuela.
And I'm Colombian. And I'm from Argentina.
Raised in Boston. My mom and my dad are from Puerto Rico.
Soy mitad chino y mitad mexicano de Sinaloa.
It was both languages. Spanglish. Spanish at home, obviously, y inglés afuera de la casa.
So joining me on the Broadcasters Podcast for this episode and the following episode, I have two great people that are in the field of broadcasting in the areas of television and documentaries. So I'm joined by the folks at NiteLite Pictures, that's NiteLite Pictures. And I'm here with award-winning television producer Ari Lowell. He's the founder and executive producer of NiteLite Pictures. And I'm here also, accompanied with him, is documentary and television producer Ari Wilhelm. They recently produced a new documentary called #WELAGENTE. And so, Harry and Ari, thanks for joining me on the Broadcasters Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ari.
Our pleasure. So let me give a little perspective to the audience here about this documentary that hopefully we get a lot of people that will be ramping up, the people that are behind this project to get this out there so this will get distributed so a lot of people can get their eyes on it, because I got a chance to look at it and I hope to give the opportunity for those out there to see this. #WELAGENTE is a 5-minute documentary that's offering a non-political, keep that point in mind, positive human look at real Hispanic immigration stories, putting a face to the diversity that adds to the fabric of America. And most recently was screened at the 15th annual Holly Shorts Film Festival. So you get a chance to have this shown at various film festivals from all the reports that I've seen, Harry and Ari. Take me behind the inspiration for this project. What brought this together?
Well, really interesting backstory is the creators gave me a call and they said, Harry, we are really unhappy with the political discourse right now about immigration and specifically Hispanic immigration. So we want to do something that maybe doesn't take sides, doesn't point fingers. And that's how they approached us and said, what do you think about making a film that would just talk about the human aspect of Hispanic immigration? And that's how it started. And we pulled this together incredibly quickly because as soon as they had talked about it, my partner, Ari, is Hispanic. And so she and I have been talking about trying to do something specifically in that genre and about that topic, but something that wasn't going to inflame or add fuel to the fire in this kind of the misinformation and the poor information that's out there for immigration. So this was a perfect opportunity for us to take a chance and do something that's a little bit different, more human, less political, no finger pointing. And we were really happy to jump on that with the right people in place, and the right distributor came on board that just made it amazingly special.
Ari, let me also get your sentiments, because obviously you did have a lot behind this documentary, this project. So tell me a little bit about the kind of heart and the kind of soul that you wanted to bring from maybe your own background, and for those that you wanted to make sure that the right voice was projected in this documentary.
Well, I have to say, one amazing thing that this project had is a lot of Americans were involved. Not like the idea came from someone that is not Hispanic. Harry is not Hispanic. The director is not Hispanic. So, in my opinion, this project was it was so important to me and so heartwarming, because it was a lot of Americans that they didn't need to say anything. No one was messing with them. They're like, hey, something to say. We have something nice to say about these people. So that's why, in my opinion, this project is so nice. Being Hispanic and being part of this was unbelievable. Finding all these people that have really nice stories to tell, really human stories, and stories that of people that are here to give back to the society, that are really grateful that they got the opportunity to be in this country, and they're just giving back. It was hard to find them, but at the same time, very rewarding.
No, and I thought you did, the casting was done fantastic. Very, very well done. I really like the variation, diversity of stories. Most importantly is, as you're trying to make that point across, these were all documented, and these were all American citizens, correct?
It's a mixture of people. There's American citizens, there are second-generation citizens, there are people becoming citizens, everyone was, that's what made it really great, because you had one of the big casting challenges we wanted to undertake was making sure we had different ages and different genders and different backgrounds all represented. And even me having been a partner with a Hispanic for 2 years, I still had no idea just how different the cultures can be, from Argentina to Spain to Mexico. So that was phenomenal to get redheaded, light-skinned Hispanics in, and Afro-Latinas, and people who had grown up here and had seen it from they didn't emigrate. They grew up, they are Americans in their mind, but they are Hispanic Americans. And there are some that knew the journey they came over. They knew that they had lived in a foreign country and made the choice to come here. Young people who had decided to leave where they were and set up a new life here. So we had all different levels of people, Hispanic immigrants, in all of their different processes and different places in the spectrum of immigration. And it was, for us, a great tapestry to see, here's all these people, and why are they here? Why did they come here? Or those who were born here, why are they proud to be here? It's really interesting. It was eye-opening for me.
Harry, you make a very positive point, and I got to make this point, and I want to go ahead and have Ari go ahead and kind of add on and expand on this, because I didn't make a mention of this yet. I'm Cuban American, and I know there was a point where my parents said, first of all, my mother became a citizen pretty much right away. It took, a number of years after she was naturalized here, and then she did go ahead and get her citizenship. My father, did not necessarily go ahead and get a citizenship until much later, but they are both definitely American citizens, very proud, wonderfully grateful for what this country's done after all the hardships of Cuba. The one thing I can tell you is that it's got to be hard when you're doing this, Ari, about having something that's done for the Hispanic community, because Hispanic is just such a large point. And Harry's making a point that there are so many different cultures, so many different dialects, so many different skin tones, cultures, so many things that are different from South America, Central America, Caribbean. And for those that have been Americanized, there's just such a different variation, because Puerto Rico in the same way also might be Caribbean, but also very Americanized. And that's always some kind of a clash sometimes between some of those cultures. Why are you, the idea that you see television that's either going to be Caribbean based or regional based, which is much more Mexican because it's the more dominant, more populated culture. So that representation had to be tough to kind of not necessarily put a quota together to make sure all areas were covered, but that you at least made it a voice that was well-rounded and well-noticed of all different cultures.
Well, we planned it that way. We didn't want everybody to be Mexican or everybody to be Puerto Rican or Cuban. We wanted to have a big mix of people, because at the end, that's what makes this country so rich. All the different cultures mixed and everybody pushing forward. So we planned it like that, and it's difficult because in LA you get a lot of Mexicans, and we didn't want that. We wanted the Caribbean, there were Puerto Ricans there. There were people that their parents are from born in New York. Like, we wanted the entire rainbow of colors in the Hispanic community.
Now, Immigrant Magazine, they reported that the film, which was conceived, and this is amazing, it was conceived and shot in 6 weeks. So definitely not much time to go ahead and get this put together, but it was originally intended to speak to an audience that perhaps didn't have much knowledge or contact with Hispanic immigrants. Maybe not the level that maybe people would think. Talk to me about the people that were on camera. So we talked about how you'd had to make the effort to get that right casting in front of the camera. What can you tell me about what you had in terms of interaction with those people that were brought on? They might have never had camera time before or ever had spoken in front of a camera, let alone have that kind of platform to speak publicly. And about the message that you hoped they were trying to convey. What can you tell me about those people? Because honestly, I love the grouping that you had. And I thought that you really selected some people that were beautiful, well-spoken, great manners, just inspirations to everybody. Harry, you first.
Sure. Well, to your point, the goal was to find people who had true and honest stories. And so most of those people had never been in front of a camera before, especially we did so many different ages. So the key thing was then finding the right director, someone who really is a pure documentarian that can make people feel comfortable, that they could open up and share these stories with us and feel comfortable. And we were very fortunate that they trusted us to let us tell these stories. And I think we didn't want to put words in their mouths. We didn't want to lead them in one direction or the other. And that's why John X. Kerry was a perfect choice to really bond, take time to get to know these individuals, so that on the stage, it was completely empty, mostly just John and the talent, so that they could form a comfortable relationship there. And I love the idea that we kind of stripped away everything else. There's nothing there to distract you from the human and the human story that's being told. And so thankfully, when you have a great documentarian, a director specifically, you really can pull amazing truths and realities out of the people. And so everything they talk about is what they felt comfortable with, things that inspired them, things that made them uncomfortable, things that drew them to the country, what they're proud of. So the experience was amazing. And I think that the talent, the people that came out and shared their stories, I think they enjoyed it as much as we did, because we were genuinely interested to hear their stories. And I think they were happy and proud to share them. And we were excited that they would allow us to have that chance. I think that's what made it, for me, so unique and special, because the film is so quiet, and that's a big risk. Most films have pointing fingers and smoking guns and big trailers, and ours has none of that. It's very, very quiet, and you have to have a strong distributor like Comcast and our studio executive, Jose Silva. When we pitched it, we said, it's going to be very quiet. There's not a lot going on here, and you're going to have to believe that we don't even know what's going to be said until we hear the words from them. And he looked at us and said, let's do this. This is important.
Ari, did you look at the ongoing debate on immigration that we've been seeing in front of our TV screens, for last couple of years, and see that the voices of those who are not documented or who are documented, the ones that are being focused right now, the undocumented immigrants, if you will, if you wanted to make sure that their voices were heard here alongside, or was it more important that the entire Hispanic community was being represented, or that we wanted to focus on those that are here that have gone through and have become residents or citizens, and that part of the Hispanic community that's been underserved because of all the mainstream media coverage has been on the border and not on the Hispanics that are here thriving and living the American dream?
Well, this is a personal opinion. I think everybody deserves a voice. And we are lucky to be here, and we are grateful. And if you hear all these stories, these people are grateful to be here, grateful to have all these opportunities. I wanted everybody to remember that. I wanted people like me that just came from another country, knowing just a few people, that gives opportunities that some other countries don't.
That goes to the crux of the debate that's going on today. But for me, it's like this, and maybe you can let me know what you think about this, but I don't look at Hispanics as a race. At least me, from where I come from, I don't look at myself as, I don't know, maybe it's just me, and maybe I just got lucky that I never got subjected to feeling like I was denigrated for any racial reasons. And and people within my family or people that I knew, I don't think necessarily got that kind of feeling the same way. Because when you look at it, Hispanics, I don't think it's the same way to try to portray Hispanics as the same as African Americans or blacks. I don't know if it's the same kind of thing. I know there are some people that will feel that way, but I'm just saying from my own perspective, I don't feel like that. And this is where leads to my next question. I want to just give a couple of examples of how Hispanics are portrayed today through entertainment, through television. Now, one of the shows, and maybe Ari, I don't know if you knew about this, because I don't know how far back you go, but Harry, maybe you don't know this either, but one of the first shows I remember fondly that directly spoke to someone like me was a show called Que Pasa USA. Have you ever heard that show?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay. Que Pasa USA was America's first bilingual situation comedy, which aired in the 1970s on PBS-owned WPBT in Miami. If you ever get a chance, it's an amazing show. It's done in Spanglish, so you have English and Spanish being spoken. I mean, it would just be a flip of a switch, just like you would do almost in a normal Spanish home. And it explored the trials and tribulations faced by the Peñas, a Cuban-American family living in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, struggling to cope with a new country and a new language. The idea was, and this is just for listeners, just to get a little context, you had an abuelo and abuela, grandparents that were still wishing they could be back in Cuba because that's where they belong. They don't feel comfortable here. The parents at that time learning to adapt, speaking English to Spanish, but with an accent, and really finding their way to go ahead and make the best for their family. And then you had the children, which were both teenagers that spoke good English. They well educated, and they weren't able to go ahead and kind of stay attached to the heritage of their families. They were trying to, but there was a bit of a disconnect. So that dynamic was played all across this show, and it ran for 39 episodes. Amazing for a show to get funded like this from the Department of Education and Welfare. Back, it was a government-funded show on a government-run television station. This opportunity came out, and for that from PBS, one of the very first shows that I saw that truly spoke, and I thought a lot of people, if they got the chance to watch this, it got syndicated, they got a chance to see the same thing. The same way we have now One Day at a Time, which had the fight. It got on Netflix. It was on for 3 seasons. It continues to go on once again. Now it's on Pop TV. We now have a similar show in that same limelight that follows the life of Penelope, a newly single Army veteran. What a great story. And her Cuban-American family as they navigate the ups and downs of life. So when we talk about diversity, here's my question. Are you surprised by the lack of these types of family stories like these on TV or in movies? Harry and Ari, I ask you both.
Well, I'm not surprised, and that's a little sad to say, but I wish it was different. But I'm not surprised. There's not enough. I don't know how to put it. There's also not enough filmmakers that are Hispanic, or there are, but you can see the movies they're doing. It's completely an American cast mostly. Like I think lately that's what sells, and that's what they're trying to sell. Maybe it's us not consuming the TV show, like, because right now I know the Penelope show, Netflix canceled it, and now it's in a different channel, but they struggle a little bit. Maybe we should,
right,
as Hispanic people, maybe we should try to watch those shows more. And I love that they're doing shows in Spanglish. For me, that's how I live. My entire brain is in Spanglish. So I wish they had more shows like that. And I wish more Hispanics also would watch them.
But now let me go ahead and turn this. I want to just go ahead and give devil's advocate right here. Because then when you look at things, there are a lot of Hispanic actors that are just in Hollywood, and they've been, truly been doing an amazing work out there. And I mean, if they're not speaking Spanish in one case, that might be one thing or the other. But, one of the first people that come to mind for me was Andy Garcia, who's one of my favorite actors and has been fantastic. And you could just put him anywhere you want and in diverse roles. And he uses that to also go ahead and foster and build his heritage. But I think, when I look at stars, and maybe that's just the Cuban in me, because I see Cuban-American entertainers, and I look at Pitbull, I look at Gloria Estefan, I look at John Cicada, and I look at some others that I don't feel like I get the feeling of, well, we need to go ahead and push, what might be a raza kind of thing. Or it has to be a film that is based, that must be an entire cast of Hispanics or an entire cast of blacks. I just think that I'd like to see more integration of different diversity. If there's good performers in different areas, let's see those performers shine. Let's not have them held back. And if there's a time to go ahead and bring projects that should represent heritage, then those projects should see the light of day wherever you can find it. And let's get those platforms open. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree.
Well, let me. Yeah. And I completely agree. There was a USC study that was done at the Annenberg Foundation, and they just recently came out with the fact that there's a very small percentage of films. They did a big study from like 2007 to 2018 or something like that, and they found that although Hispanics are 18% of the population, that there was a very small percentage of leading Hispanic, Latino actors in those films, and a small percentage behind the camera. So I think they need to do a better job of recognizing that audience. And I think, to Ari's point, I think it's important that audience also make themselves visible, because entertainment goes where the dollars are. And so if Fast and Furious is where the money's going to be made, they're going to put their dollars into that. They're less concerned about oftentimes telling the truth and connecting to audiences if they can get a big tentpole project. But what I do think is missing, and I think it talks about it in the USC study, was the fact that, there's just not the more realistic portrayal families and lives of Hispanics. I think that you've seen it a lot with African Americans. I think there's many more shows that are coming out with writers and directors and in front and behind the lens for African Americans, and you're seeing a bunch of different portrayals of their different lives. And I think it started back with the Huxtables and people talking about how come that wasn't there previously. Why did it have to be the Jeffersons versus the Huxtables? And so I think there's been a lot of progress. I think Hispanic can still go a long way. I think there's more to do with that. I think we have to be conscious to not put people in stereotypical roles in general. And I think entertainment goes with the lowest common denominator when we can. It's really great when a network takes a chance, like the PBS show. How great back in the day they took an opportunity to tell a great story. It happened to be this, and hopefully there's more of those kinds of networks now that can maybe take those opportunities to portray different kinds of Hispanic lives that are more family reality-based things.
It's so interesting to me because for me, and this is the argument I come from with this, is that I just don't feel like, again, as I said before, I don't see Hispanics need to be put in the same spotlight as African Americans or blacks, just because I don't feel like, I don't know, there are obviously some sectors of Hispanics that have gone through economic hardship or have gone through various political issues. But, when you look at African Americans or blacks, they're trying to say that, well, there's been a lot of oppression from it. And I think in some cases for Hispanics, there hasn't been so much of that. Maybe some areas have been for others, but I mean, there were a lot of Hispanics, before they came into this country. I can speak for Cubans, back in the late 50s, up until Fidel Castro came into power, Havana, Cuba was a place to go, much like a Las Vegas. It was affluent. People really were living just as good or maybe better than American people were at the time. And the same thing could be said for South America, say for Venezuela, at rich culture, Colombia, South America, Mexico. Probably sometimes there are a lot of people that also were quite affluent, but obviously there's a bit of a system where there are those, the social, I guess the totem pole would be, there is a lot of issues where there are people they're not able to go and make that much here. So the opportunity to come to America is important to them. And for those that are coming in and to portray the stories of those, then more stories need to be told from the border. More stories need to be told about the plight of what we went through. And I think there's been stories that have been put out there, but I think it's not a bad thing because I think Hispanics have been given the benefit of not being put into that place. I would prefer that we're not. I would prefer that there are projects that need to provide clarity and focus for heritage, but I would not want to be pigeonholed in saying, well, we're a race, we're a color, because I don't see that, because there's a lot of light-skinned Hispanics that are out there in the same way. I mean, you could talk to people from Spain themselves that are European, that are light-skinned as well. Cubans have that same thing. Puerto Ricans have the same thing. I just don't see that played up. I think possibly putting that across to producers into Hollywood, that's the perception they're getting, but that's not how I see about it. And I think viewers and consumers don't see that the same way. I think it's a little different. Now, you're in Hollywood. I might be wrong, but do you see if there might be a disconnect there, or do you see that there's something where that's exactly why your project, this documentary, plays to my argument as opposed to what Hollywood would say?
Well, let me say one thing, and then Ari can give her opinion on that thing as well, is that, I think I really like that the Annenberg Foundation summed up things and said that what's missing is authentic and accurate representation of Hispanics' life in the U.S. And there are, as we know, and we talked about, so many variations. Hispanic means many, many different cultures and individuals. And I think what the study found is that the authenticity of people's real lives here, while, you may want to talk about people fleeing other countries and coming here, those are much more dramatic and big stories. What they're saying is, are there stories that other people, kids growing up, can look at and say, hey, that's me. I can see myself in those characters and in my lifestyle. And they're seeing a lack of those kinds of stories where the lead characters, where the main entity is just a Hispanic family, whether that's a Cuban or a Puerto Rican or a blended, Hispanic family. And that was the point of it. And I think that when we have enough storytellers, I think we should be able to open up. Our country is very big, and I think there's a lot of stories that haven't been told. And I think that is an important thing that we should look at, because I think we're missing chunks of our American melting pot if we're not including everyone in those stories.
Now, for you, Ari, did you want to make one point and add to that?
No, I agree with Harry saying.
Okay, wonderful. Now, for that USC Annenberg study that you were quoting there, Harry, I'm going to come back and also bring up the Nieman Foundation at Harvard. They recently wrote this, that, quote, Spanish language, anything that's Spanish language, doesn't fully cover the complex identities young Hispanic Americans hold today. That more and more Spanish language media companies, which, let's just put that point across, we have major media companies that are Spanish language focused, that are huge, that are here to serve a huge market. So we do have that. Now, we have a company like Me Too that launched on YouTube in 2012. We have major companies that we know for many years, Univision, which was Scene TV beforehand, and it's one of the largest companies in the world when it comes to media, and Telemundo. They have tried to bridge the gap as well. Hispanic Americans 18 and older prefer to consume English language content online, according to this Harvard article. How do you view this claim, the fact that younger Hispanic Americans, younger generations, they're not consuming much about their heritage. They're just really adapting to English, to American culture, and just becoming much more English and not really holding on to the heritage of their parents or their grandparents. Or are you first?
I think also they're in a weird place. These people that were born here, their parents speak Spanish. Their parents are fully Venezuelan, Cuban. But at the end, these kids went to school in an American school. They spoke Spanish all day long. They probably even feel more comfortable speaking in English than in Spanish. For them, they have a different culture than what their parents had. So I think that's what is happening. And in maybe the Telemundo and Univisions of the world should adapt a little bit more to this new culture, which is an amazing culture that is a mix of Americans and Hispanic people, that half of the day they speak in English, their life is in English, but they come home and they speak in Spanish, and they eat tacos and arepas, and they, I feel like some of these things that I see in Telemundo is exactly what my mom watches in Mexico, which right. I don't think many people in America would relate, because it's different. So that's what I think about that.
Harry, what do you think about that?
We all have a background, right? Regardless. And one thing I found that connected me to the film was that in the stories that we heard from our documentary, I heard shades of stories from my great-great-grandparents' stories that were handed down about when they came here from Italy, or my mom's side when they came here from Poland. So I could still relate and understand that they were leaving and coming to a better life of opportunity. So, through the generations, I would still have Italian dinners, and we would meet with the Italian big side of the family and do things. So I think the family kept the traditions alive and kept the heritage alive, but we were Americans. And I think we were proud and happy to be here. And so this is your culture. When you grow up here, this is what you have. And so I think it's up to the family to kindle the differences that we have. But I think one of the best quotes in the film is how much we're alike and how similar we all are. And that's what I think I learned from the documentary, watching it and hearing your comments. I believe that we can all realize that we're in this place together, and we need to ultimately, to Ari's point, the networks and the TVs networks, the studios, they need to understand this is who we are in our culture that's currently here. Yes, we've got people flocking in, and they're going to be kind of stuck in these two worlds, but the kids that are born here, the majority, this is their homeland. And I think that they keep the family alive with the heritage stories, but I think that it's a strong relationship they have with this country. And I think the more we can blend those things together, and I do love that Ari speaks English and Spanish simultaneously. She goes in and out of them constantly. And I feel like that's the natural way the Hispanics communicate. And it's very fun for me to watch her do that. very different. In my family, it was Italian. They would go in and out of Italian, and no one thought good or bad of it. But I do like that, we keep those things alive, those pieces that make America different and unique that others don't. Ari told me a great story how, the biggest thing she found when she came here is the amazing food choices we have, because we have so many people from different lands and countries coming here to share their food with us. And so now they're Americans, but they're bringing their Chinese ways or their Japanese food techniques. And, other countries don't get that as much. We have so many people here that can lend it, and it was a great visual of what our country's all about. That's why we have such an amazing array of food here in this country.
And this goes to another point, and I think, and I want to just go ahead and get on my bully pulpit real quick here and make this point to listeners of the Broadcasters Podcast, and for any of those media executives out there that might be listening or catching this later on. In my opinion, if you are looking to reach that target Hispanic demographic, especially the younger demographic we're talking about, those that might be second or third generation Hispanics that have made their way into the country, that are fully intertwined and they have been fully Americanized, okay? One thing I would think that would be very important, and Ari, I think you can definitely understand where I'm coming from here, is the fact that, and Harry, you just made the point, when you have various traditions that every individual country has, because, there's can be said about other cultures where in China or Asian culture, China and Japan, there's only a certain amount of countries with various changes to their culture. But among the Hispanic realm, you have so many countries, so many different types of cuisine, so many different types of music, culture, everything. So when it comes to, if you're Mexican, you're not going to listen to vallenato from Colombia. You're not going to go ahead and want to have, whatever it is, if you're Mexican, you might not want to have mofongo like a Dominican or a Puerto Rican might have. Or, you might not have chilaquiles if you're Cuban. The thing is, there's diversity among that. But the thing is, we all want to try everything out, just like it would be food. We want to try everything out. We want to sample all these different cultures, open our mind to this kaleidoscope, I would think it is, of cultures and traditions and heritages that Hispanic culture has in total. Because it's just not one. It's honestly, it's a spectrum, a prism of all these different areas that should be focused more. And that's the diversity of the culture, I would think. And I think that's what needs to be pointed out. There's just so many stories within all those different countries, different people within those cultures, different stories you can find that have probably been written and have been put together. There's got to be screenwriters of these different types of cultures. There's integration stories, all of this that can be talked about here. We do not need to see the influx of Mayans MC and Narcos and seeing Univision playing soap operas or, heralding Pablo Escobar and things like that. We don't need, or Queen of the South. We don't need those kind of stories. We want stories that show, coming of age. We want to see the stories that are different areas of our lives, a suspension, really just suspend ourselves from everyday life and see all these beautiful areas that are around us and let it be focused. And I think that's what needs to be done more. That's why I think I got a flavor of that from #WELAGENTE. As a producer and for different projects, what can some, like a studio like NiteLite Pictures do to try to get those stories across? Because that's obviously, I think would you agree that's a sector that could be serviced by those kind of stories? Would that be what that demographic could really attach to?
Well, I think lately I've been seeing a little bit, not the main character is usually not Hispanic, but I've seen some side stories where I just watched, I think it was Survivor or Last Survivor, or something like that. And the president of the United States is Kiefer Sutherland, but his chief of staff, his right hand, he's Hispanic, and right. He's fully Hispanic. He speaks in Spanish. You have no idea how much I like that, because he has a regular job. He's a normal person working in a powerful guy, and he's Hispanic. I love that. I agree with you. I don't watch La Reina del Sur. I don't watch Narcos. I don't watch any of that because I feel like it's cheapening my culture. And not only my culture, but a lot of people just hear Spanish and they just assume we are one bucket. I don't like it. I don't like to people to think that Colombians are all narcos or Mexicans now are all narcos, or I don't like it. So I don't watch it. But instead, I'll turn to watch these shows that have a couple characters that are Hispanic, powerful, and hardworking, and just as important as many other American characters.
And most importantly, too, is that there have been quite a few actors and actresses that have done very well within the industry, that they stand out more than anything else. And I think nothing held them back from the success. I think of Sofia Vergara. Oh my God, she's all over the place. I think of Eva Longoria. She's producing the series Grand Hotel for ABC. I'm thinking Jennifer Lopez. Her music career has been thriving for years. She's now featured in a big movie that she's going to be part of and starring in. I think of Andy Garcia, like I said before. I could think of Pedro and Brad. I could think of and then stars of the past as well. You think Raquel Welch. You don't think of her being Spanish. You don't remember Ricardo Montalban and all that they did before. But there's just so much there. The fact of the matter is just certain people are just not focused upon that they're Hispanic. It's not being pointed out. But that's okay. What could be done is, I think we just offered the heritage and tradition. It should just be pointed out. It should be point of focus. We can have a lot of different stories because, I mean, there are a lot of stories that can be said from the Hispanic, all these different Hispanic cultures that could take the place of rebooting some other movie out there that has been an over and over ad nauseum. My thought is, Hispanics should have their big fat Greek wedding. We should have a Crazy Rich Asians. We should have those kind of movies, which it shows that family dynamic. And we have that out there and tells the story and becomes something more. And it doesn't just have to be where it has to be some kind of crime story, because it's very exotic, and the exotic look has to be something dark. I don't know why, but that's the idea that I come from. Now, I want to go ahead and move along because we could go along for hours on this story. But, one of the things that really holds everyone back, and I'm sure all of you at NiteLite have this issue, because in Hollywood, I've been talking about this going back to last year before the holidays. Now, NiteLite has produced various television episodes, pilots, specials, and digital content for numerous networks and studios. And I could go on and talk about the things that you've done, that you got to work with Kevin Hart, and you got to work on various TV shows and projects. Now, one of the things that's been affecting Hollywood altogether, and I'm imagining it's going to go ahead and become worse, is the standoff between the Writers Guild and the Association of Talent Agents. So that standoff's been going on for what now, 5 months now? And I don't know how that's going to be affecting down the line if we do not have a resolution here, because the actors are going to also be affected by this. I want to know if there's, only just for your sake, has there been anything, communication with the producers, writers, talent, the things that you wanted to do to greenlight projects and to produce projects, have that been hampered at all on your end because of what's going on here with the writers and the agents?
Well, what's really interesting is, our business is all about pitching and creating concepts and ideas that we believe in, that we think are also going to connect to an audience, and that we feel that there's a home for it, right? Whether it's a streaming or feature film or television series. I think there was, like any kind of disagreement in a union situation, there was definitely a hiccup, and people didn't know necessarily what to do. I think now that it's gone to where it is, the writers, I will say this to the writers union, they have moved very quickly. And some of the writers we're dealing with, they have told us how the writers have set up a portal where they can have access directly to producers and studio projects. And so the Writers Guild has moved into a very, very fast position to try and help their writers connect directly to producers. So in the short term, I don't feel that we are at a loss. I mean, when you're trying to find a particular writer, it's a little more difficult if they're on strike or not with their agents at this point. But we were able to quickly get information from the Writers Guild. They're able to put our information directly in touch with the writers. So, I think this is a big shift though in Hollywood, and I don't know how this is going to resolve, but it's definitely something that's, we're living through history at this point to see how this resolves, because this is a big one that has ripples that will last for a long time.
I totally agree. Now, in addition, NiteLite Pictures also has produced national television commercials, digital and branded content for advertising clients. Now, I want to ask this because this would be from behind the scenes. I'm always so upset, and I feel like I need to pound the pavement every time anybody has to deal with any kind of corporate suits when it comes to creativity. So I want to know from your own perspective, talk to me about if the corporate brands that you work with are still open to some real creativity, that you have some real creative things that come in for the bullpen in your studios, something that maybe Ari might come up with, that might come up for a project, or Harry, something that you might be working on, collaborating with a team to put together for a client, say for an agency project, whatever it might be. Or are they open to more real creativity these days, or are they just preferring projects that are the status quo?
What's great about having this many, distribution arms, right? The audiences are so scattered and segmented now. They're either streaming, or they're on YouTube, or they're on cable or pay cable. There's so many choices, plus, traditional television. So they're all over the place. And so what I think brands have realized is that there's no way for them to just simply go with the status quo and reach those eyeballs anymore. They have to be selective, and they have to be more creative, because you have to get noticed. You used to be able to get a TV series. You knew it was going to go on. You knew they were going to put all the marketing material behind it, and you were going to get the eyeballs. Now it's not so much. You may end up on a very, scattered cable buy. And at that point, you need to say, how can I rise? How are people going to know I'm here? There's so much happening every minute of the day that's being uploaded. So I think brands are now saying, hey, we can't just sit back and do what we normally do. We're just not getting the results. So we need to trust producers to have ideas that might cut through or stand out, and they have to support that. I think budgets are difficult, because I think people think that if it's not going on traditional television, that if it's for cable or streaming, that maybe there can be a discount. But, what you see right now on the Netflix and the Hulus, and they are equivalent to an HBO, equivalent to an ABC. So, there's really no line between the dollar spend, but you have to be able to really attract and find your audience. And I think brands are more open to that now. They realize that.
So now, as I mentioned, the list of people that you've worked with in terms of companies, when it comes to, you've worked with ABC, you work with Disney, we work with Fox, which obviously they've gone through a lot of different changes with their library. Let me just take them as a focal point, because now you have Disney that's going to go ahead and jump into the over-the-top streaming services with a very viable and honestly a groundbreaking offer that's going to go to the heart of Netflix. And with all the money that's being spent on content right now, when it comes to Apple spending billions of dollars, Netflix has been spending up to along with spending junk bonds of billions of dollars, which to the point they're tens of billions of dollars in debt right now. Can they make back what they've put into it? When you look at what you have going on now, talk to me about how do you look at the atmosphere now when it comes to what Hollywood's looking at, because everything's online. The most momentum is online, and not so much for cable and network. I don't just see it at all. And there's room for those areas to be revived again, but I don't see it. So when you look at who you work with, which outlets you can get your content produced on, whether it's content that is your original programming you're trying to get pushed across, or working for other clients, talk to me about where's your focus. I mean, do you still keep an eye on what's going on here, like maybe how some agencies might have been, where they focused on the networks and cable, and now streaming might be a much bigger focus than ever before?
Well, here's what I want to say. And it's never works to simply constantly chase the rabbit. Okay. Things are moving constantly. And I think that there are things that are going to, you have to realize which entities are still valuable to viewers and audiences, because at the end of the day, what Ari and I always judge everything by is this story worth telling, and is there an audience who wants to see it? And if we believe that's the case, then we're like, okay, so then the next step is, where is that audience? How do we find them? So people a lot of times fear change. They like to have the same old in places, but I prefer it like this, because with everything that is changing, yes, some things are going to fall from grace, but that doesn't mean they fall completely, but they may have to have a new level set. But when that happens, you also have new opportunities popping up. So if you pay attention, you can look and say, well, now this story that we would never have gotten sold on a traditional television network or through a studio, now it's found a home on a video on demand. That's amazing to me. We now can look at different projects and different opportunities, because now I think there's choices to it. And you have to just be aware. And I think you have to also, as a producer in Hollywood, I always say the same thing, is you can't just have one project. You know, you have to focus on something you believe in, but you need to have a development slate of things that get you very, very excited. And then you have to be willing to pursue it to the end, and make sure that you get it done with the right people and the right partners, and that you finally get it in front of that audience. And if you don't have that drive, it's very difficult if you're just purely looking at it from a money standpoint or a distribution standpoint. You know, you have to have something you believe in, and you got to pay attention, because obviously things are shifting and changing, but those opportunities usually pop up because, you know, QB and Tubi and all these new ones that are out that make things, you know, they really challenge the norm. And I think that's really fun for us, because we can look at projects that maybe we had said, this isn't the right time, we can't figure out what to do with it. Suddenly a new thing opens up, and like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity for that kind of series to be broken out this way. So that's kind of how you have to look at it, and you have to sort of pay attention. It's hard to read the trade, as you know, or unless you're talking to someone who knows, it's very difficult to discern what's reality and what's not reality. So we're very fortunate. ICM, we work very closely with them, and so we get a lot of, you know, straight talk from them, so we better understand and protect ourselves, so we don't spend too much time in an area that maybe is not going to be as profit heavy return for us, or might not be able to execute the vision we're hoping for, and, you know, focus on those that are up and coming, or the ones that are very stable. And, you know, you just have to be willing to continually be adjusting. It's part of the fun.
Ari, I want to ask you a couple of questions just from the production side, and before we're going to wrap things up, and obviously want to take some time to come back and talk about NiteLite Pictures and what you're doing in terms of other projects. What I'm also interested by was, when I read your bio, the fact that you were working on the U.S. division of a really popular series in Mexico that I remember seeing on Univision for when I was growing up as a kid. And it was just, you know, it was goofy fun, but it was just very popular in Mexico, is El Chavo de Ocho, from the group of Chespirito, which in Mexico is like Cantinflas. It's like legendary. It's like Bugs Bunny, like popular worldwide.
Yeah, he's huge.
The one thing is that you have it here. It continues to be something that is promoted today, and still, much like I talked about Que Pasó Say, it finds an audience and people are still attached to this. Talk to me about working with something that was such a legendary brand that I'm pretty sure you must have grown up watching yourself as a kid.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. Of course, I watched it when I was a kid, and then I had the opportunity when I moved here. Well, before I also worked with them, but when I moved here, they were there's a lot of people in America that watch El Chavo del Ocho, and it's people that are 50 years old, people that kids that are 5-year-olds. So they're doing more efforts to bring. They have a cartoon now, because obviously the main actor is not alive anymore. So they have a cartoon, and to bring all of that to America is tricky. All the merchandise and everything. So that's what I was doing with them. It's amazing. It's an amazing company. It's amazing what they do. It's amazing how they protect the legacy of basically one man that had a great idea, and the family keeps it alive. I love it.
That's fantastic. And finally, let's go ahead and talk once again about WELAGENTE, and just give people just an idea of if there's any place where they can go ahead and catch this documentary, and take a little bit of time here, Harry, to talk to our listeners about some of the projects you're working on and how people can kind of get attached and, you know, really keep an eye on what you're doing and what projects you have that are in the works that we could be looking out for.
Sure. I think for WELAGENTE was, it had a great run through Comcast, and it found a second life because it started to win some awards and became kind of a darling on the film festival circuit. So we ended up winning a big audience award from the Maui Film Festival, and now the next place you're going to see it is at Oaxaca. And Comcast right now is considering potentially re-airing the documentary, which would be great. So we are hoping that works out. I think it served its life and it did so much beyond our expectations. And so for it to have this second life and a second running is really phenomenal. So hopefully Oaxaca is in October, I think the beginning of October, and then we'll see if Comcast feels there's an audience to continue it with. NiteLite develops a lot of TV and film-based concept. So one thing we've been looking at and people have been approaching us is to do a more in-depth immigration discussion, documentary style. So we are actually looking into doing something like that, but we also are developing a few television series, primarily comedy-based stuff. So hopefully, this is our big pitch season comes up for us is throughout the summer, and then we do more development time beginning of fall. So for us, we're now looking at what our next projects are. But one thing that's really kind of stuck in our brains is the amazing response we've gotten from people about WELAGENTE and how much they connect to the, not just non-Hispanics, but Hispanics as well, how much they connect to the stories, the people in the film for WELAGENTE. And it started us thinking, well, maybe we should look and do something else with the 2020 election coming up. What if there's something else we can do? Again, that's non-political, but that just offers a human point of view where we can all be very proud to be American and the people that are here. And so, that's gotten us to think maybe there's more that we can tell. So that's one thing we were talking about in our development meetings is what else could we do? Because we really feel this has been a very powerful and well-received message. And what else is there? What's next?
When it comes to the Hispanic community, I think one thing that can also be used, a real benefit, is talking about the athletes that we have in the community, because there are just so many different sports. When you go to any Hispanic-related restaurant or just any kind of social club, when you look at boxing, and you look at soccer, which is such an amazing sport, and really, but when I look at some places, there's a couple of Colombian restaurants and a couple of the places I can go where if I want to go and caught the World Cup, the Hispanic community comes out in full force, and whatever communities they come from, and you see camaraderie and you see togetherness and you see people, they're having a great time. They root for their countries, but all together they are unified. There's just, it's a wonderful feeling just to have that kind of feeling. If there's certain stories that can be told because there's a bit of a relation to that, and then just finding ways to find stories that will catch a niche. Maybe there's just something to be said about if there's just more books that are out there, or again, short films like the ones that they're doing that can be adapted into something longer feature that could catch the attention. And it's just got to be, it takes sometimes just a film or just a project that will overcome everything else and say, you know what, the producers, these big studio heads, they're saying, you know what, we want to have more content like this. Netflix, they're going to order more content like this. If there's just something there, I think that's what needs to really spark things up, because I think traditions and heritage and just find a way to show our culture from within. Just even from the music, my God, there's so much great music from everywhere across the board. When you look at the Caribbean side, you have salsa, bachata. From the South American side, you got bachata. And to me, you got a cumbia and vallenato. And then you have Mexican side, you have the banda, and you have the ranchera, and just a whole mix of everything. There's stories among the musicians that you have and the artistry of everybody that can be told. I just think there's just so much that can be said of flavor that just needs to come back. And there's been times where I remember when the music industry has gotten a renaissance, where I remember we're in the late 90s where we had so many different stars that were top stars from the Hispanic realm, when you had Mark Anthony and Ricky Martin and Jennifer Lopez and John Scott, and you could just look at the people that were coming across, and you saw this influx of Hispanic culture being brought in. I want to see that again, and I think that just should be a constant. That's where I see things going. But anything we can do to overshadow and to overcome an immigration debate that is holding things down and is portraying the Hispanic community in not such a positive light, we need to turn that around. Something has to happen there. And I hope that companies like yours and other producers and content creators out there will find that message and continue to work on that. WELAGENTE is a great place to go, and it's the right kind of direction that I hope more content creators are doing. So again, Harry Lowell, Ari Wilhelm of NiteLite Pictures, I'm so thankful for you taking about an hour here to join me here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Thank you so much for your time, and keep going doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.